So we come to our fourth and final reflection for Good Friday. And the verse this time is Romans 8, verse 32. Romans 8:32. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? It's a lovely verse. It almost bounces from Christ's death onto something else. So Romans 8:32, let me read it again. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? So I want to focus on that little question. How will he not also? How will he not also? He who did not spare his own son. Now that says so much, doesn't it? Reminds you of Abraham about to sacrifice his son Isaac in Genesis. He who did not spare his own son. God was willing to give everything. Whatever we needed, God says, I'll do what's necessary. Why? Because he cared for us. His love for us was so strong. He's willing to give his son. Now, it wasn't the Father forcing the Son. We know that everywhere in Scripture it's clear. Christ offered. The Son said to the Father, let me pay for their sins. Let me give my life for them. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all. He gave him up for us. We've looked at the fact that we're sinners. We didn't deserve it. And when it happened, we didn't deserve it even then. He gave him up for us all. But then the next step, how will he not also? If God has revealed himself to us like that, if God has showed himself to be in that kind of desire for us, that kind of relationship with us, if that's where his heart lies towards us, how can he stop there? How can he not also just unroll everything else? How can he say, I'm going to give you my son, but nothing else? See the way it's put. He did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all. If he has done that, he's not going to say that far and no further. Of course, what comes next has to be this. How will he not also, along with his son, graciously give us all things? Now just imagine that for a moment. God has given us the best thing that he possibly could. And he says that there's a package here. With my son comes everything. Nothing is withheld. With my son comes everything. My world is yours because I'm giving you my son. Now, the context that Paul's writing to here is a context of suffering. So in our current situation, uncertain times, uncertain days ahead, some people really, really struggling, and many people giving so much for the lives of others. In this context of struggling, where Paul puts it in this way, we do not know what we ought to pray for. Things are so difficult, things are so strange. Also, verse 22, we know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth. Not only so, but we ourselves also enter into that groaning, inwardly groaning. In a world where there's difficulty, uncertainty, stress, death facing us, God says to us, if I've given you my son, you've got everything. I'm withholding nothing from you. Amazing, isn't it? God draws us up, lifts us up through Christ into his presence, brings us into the very bosom of his home, his family, his person, the Father, Son and the Spirit together. We are joining with them. The death of Christ is a wonderful, wonderful thing, our entrance into God.